Hi, I'm Sanjay Jogia, and I'm a wedding and portrait photographer based in Harrow, London, and a Canon ambassador.
Thanks, Sanjay. And how long have you had the Canon EOS R5 for now?
So I was lucky enough to have the R5 quite early on before its launch, just to be able to create some content actually for the launch. But during that whole project, I was discovering things afresh. So I was discovering exactly what it could do beforehand. I wasn't coached to use. I wasn't coached to say certain things, and it was just an amazing experience to be able to see what new technology is on its way.
What have you actually had a chance to shoot with the R5?
In the real world, I actually shot a wedding last weekend. So that's the most recent thing. I have some more weddings lined up, so some COVID-secure weddings coming up, which is going to be an interesting experience. But we had this wedding last weekend, which was the first COVID wedding, and it was the first real-world outing with two R5s with a whole range of RF lenses, and it was, again, an amazing experience, just under pressure of a real wedding in situations that we had no real control over. And it was faultless. It was an absolutely amazing experience.
And after using the R5 now, what would you say is the standout feature for you?
Standout features, that's a difficult one because there are so many. Focusing is one thing that has to be mentioned because it's so intelligent, it's so intuitive, it's so accurate and quick. It's breathtaking actually how good that is, but on top of that there's the IBIS as well, and the 8K video. And whilst it's a photo-centric hybrid camera rather than a video-centric hybrid camera, the 8K allows me to shoot some video clips and then pull 35 megapixel TIFF files from, which I can use as a perfectly usable TIFF and process it in the same way that I would the raw files and then print them. So it just opens up so many possibilities. But then on top of that, there's everything else that comes with mirrorless cameras: the size, the form factor, the weight, the functionality on the RF lenses, just the customization. There are so many things, it's a long list.
And then so far, what has been your favorite RF lens?
Some very close first and second places, but recently I've been able to use the 7200, which I've always loved. I've always loved the EF 7200, and that's been my favorite lens, I think, for all of time. But the 28 to 70 f2, I think, is just a stunning lens. It's it's a little bit heavier than the 2470. It's probably about the same weight as the 7200 from memory, but that doesn't bother me. When the lens is that good, I can forgive the size and the weight.
And how have you found the balance of those heavier RF lenses paired with that slightly smaller R5 body?
So to put this in context, I'm actually a 1DX shooter. I have been for over a decade, so I'm used to big cameras, heavy lenses. When using something like 7200 or 2870 on an R5, the whole combination is actually still lighter than what I'm used to normally. But I generally tend to balance my cameras on the lenses anyway, just with the way I brace myself when I'm shooting. So it really doesn't, it's not an issue for me. If anything, because the whole combination is much lighter, it's just far easier to use. So it's something that it just feels intuitive.
Have you noticed the amazing stabilization in the R5 come into play when you've been using it?
Yes and no. It's such a good system. I think when you use it for the first time, you notice it, and beyond that, you forget about it because it's just so good. There was a situation early on when I was using the pre-production models to create the launch material with, and I shot an 8K clip, which is probably about 14 or 15 seconds of a bride walking down some stairs, handheld, no neck strap, no stabilization. It was with the 28-70, so the lens doesn't have IS, but yet you get 8 stops in body, even with certain non-IS lenses. And it was literally just handheld in front of me like this, and it felt like it was shot with gimbal. It was that smooth.
This one's an interesting one. What is your dream kit setup?
Oh wow. That's a tough one. I love the 1DX Mark III. I love the R5. They're both very different machines. Right now I have my hands on two R5s 1535, 2470, 2870, 7200, 85 RF, 50mm RF. So really there isn't there isn't a gap in that at all. The 35 macro is an amazing lens as well. So I'm really just waiting for Canon to, sort of launch, and this is not a hint, by the way, the prime lens, more RF primes, because I love the EF24 1.4. And, it's hard to imagine that Canon won't have an RF version of that coming. And the one I haven't tried yet is the 85mm macro. That's something I'm excited to use.
And if you could literally shoot anything you wanted with the R5, what would you choose?
Well, I already get to shoot fantastic weddings. Even in lockdown, we've got some amazing weddings coming up, so I'm really excited about that. I'm a huge Formula One fan, so right now fans can't go to Formula One. I'd love to be able to take the R5 with, a bunch of the long lenses, some of the newer long lenses, and really have some fun and just see what that AF system can do. But trackside position with a couple of R5s with a couple of different lenses, I think that would be an amazing situation.
And have you managed to get your hands on any of the other long lenses that are yet to be released from Canon?
No, not beyond the 7200. It's not really relevant to my main genre, which is weddings. I tend to, the longest lens I tend to have at weddings is a 7200. Sometimes I'll use a 2x extender on an EF lens if I need to, but not very often. So that's something that I'd love to do. Also, to answer the previous question, is go back to safari in Kenya and shoot some of that with long lenses as well. That would just be unbelievable.
And lastly, do you have any advice for people considering moving to the Canon RF series of bodies?
I think the message has always been the same. Try and avoid just looking at the tech specs, because they can be misleading. It's always about the experience. It's always about how the specifications and the abilities of any piece of equipment come together and how you can actually use them, because everyone uses their equipment in different ways. Lenses and bodies are tools, and as artists, they're basically paintbrushes, and every artist uses a paintbrush in a different way, has a different stroke. So it's really important, I think, to test these things out first. And I think everyone will be incredibly surprised. I was going to say pleasantly surprised, but actually incredibly surprised at how good the new lenses are and how good the new camera technology actually is in the real world.